Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast. This is your escape for real, unscripted conversations about sports, hobbies, life, and storytelling. No scripts, no forced takes, just Man Cave talk. Now, here's your host, Dan Kasper.
We kick off this hour chatting with our good friends, Mr. Hunter Baumgart, Brewers reporter for Fox Sports 920. He is also the host of the baseball pregame show and Milwaukee Baseball Tonight. Hunter, you're becoming a regular. I like it, dude. Welcome back on the program, man.
Yeah, happy to be a regular, especially when there's so much to talk about with this team, right? And good to see them get a couple of wins the last two nights after going 1-6 against the Pirates in their first 7 games against Pittsburgh this season.
That's kind of crazy, I think, because the Brewers for the longest time, it felt like they owned the Pirates. But yeah, I never thought of that. They've struggled a little bit this year against this team.
Yeah, they got swept into the All-Star break, and then of course lost Monday, lost 2 of 3 back in April. Before really their season turned around. I mean, they were 13-13 heading into April 26th, which was the series finale against Pittsburgh, the first time they played them. Kyle Harrison has a great start on that day. They get a win, and since that day, they have had the best record in baseball at 58-30. So you could also kind of credit the Pirates for the turnaround in late April for this season as well. But no, good to get a couple of wins the last 2 nights, both by the same score, 4-2. It's almost like we were watching the same game with Senzatela coming in and then Uribe and McGill, but everybody did their job, and good couple of wins, and now you're back to 71-43.
Absolutely. Well, hey, last week when we were chatting with you, we were previewing the trade deadline. So, well, it's come and gone. No Skubal. You mentioned one of the newbies, and we get to see Dustin May coming up here this afternoon. Your thoughts on the trade deadline and the players that the Brewers did get by the deadline?
Yeah, I think it was obviously the big fish was Skubal, and from everything that I've been hearing, from everything that's been reported, the Brewers were more in on Skubal than they had been on a big player in recent years. I mean, they really went for it here with Skubal, and unfortunately the Tigers chose the Dodgers offer, and there's nothing you can do at the end of the day with that. So unfortunately the Brewers lost out on him, but it really did seem like the clubhouse, Pat Murphy, like there was a real belief in there that they could get this guy, and that's obviously not something that the Brewers always are in on, right? We talked about it before the trade deadline, that there was just too much smoke to that fire for them to not be in on it. And now kind of looking back, it sounds like they had a pretty good offer on the table, maybe even more than what they would have offered in the past. But the Tigers went with the Dodgers offer. Now, how much does that have to do with Tarik Skubal also, coming out and saying, or I don't know if he said it, but the report came out from Bob Nightingale that Skubal would prefer to be with the Dodgers in free agency next year. And how much did that have a role in sending him over there? Because he had been so great for the Tigers, and maybe they wanted to do him a solid or whatever it happens to be. There's a lot of factors that you could dive into there, but they try to get Skubal, and then you have to pivot. And it kind of seemed like, we were heading to the final 3 hours before the trade deadline. They hadn't really made a move other than a very, a minor league type of deal with the Cleveland Guardians on Saturday morning. But in the last few hours, I think they did some significant, made some significant moves that could help them. Dustin May and JoJo Romero. We'll see Dustin May today make his debut. I think that's the type of veteran guy you wanted in your rotation down the stretch with a bunch of young guys trying to make up for Brandon Woodruff. Obviously, it's hard to make up for Brandon Woodruff, but this Dustin May pickup, I think, signals them trying to get a veteran, and that they did, even trading within the division, which I did not expect. And then I think the underrated, move of the deadline could be Antonio Senzatela. We've already seen him with a couple of productive outings, and as much as we talked about Skubal and we talked about the starting pitching and what they could add at the trade deadline on that side, I think sometimes we maybe overlooked the need for a reliever, and they've really it feels like they've needed that one more reliever in that bullpen throughout this season and one more guy to use in the seventh inning so it doesn't have to be Ashby all the time. And you saw it Tuesday night. You saw it last night where Senzatela can be really effective in that role. And he hasn't pitched back I think it was just the second time this year where he's pitched back to back. So doing that after, getting off the plane and basically pitching on Tuesday night is really impressive. So I think he's going to be a key to that bullpen down the stretch. Overall, I think it was a solid deadline. Could it have been amazing if they would have landed the big fish? Yes, but also you would have had to give up prospects, and there's always a cost to that as well.
What can Brewers fans expect from Dustin May? We saw him earlier in the year, had a really great outing against the Brewers, but what kind of pitcher is Dustin May, and what can fans expect from him?
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen a little bit. When he was asked about that, when he was introduced to us on Tuesday, he said you're getting a pitcher with a lot of fight and a lot of, you're going to see a lot of fire on the mound. And I think we're excited to see that. Kyle Harrison, who was teammates with him in Boston, also said that the other day that, you're going to see a fiery guy, kind of like Miz, right? Shows a lot of emotion on the mound, and a guy who's been in a bunch of different circumstances and down the stretch, like, that can really help you, right? These guys, whether it be Logan Henderson or Jacob Mizorowski or even Robert Gasser, Shane Drowan, these guys are, a lot of them, doing it for the first or second time down the stretch here. And when you have a guy who's been in those types of situations, whether, it's a big game that he's starting or whether it's, a situation in the sixth inning with a couple on and a couple out and you got to get the out, you trust those veteran guys to go out and get those out. So, the ERA 4.38 in 21 starts. It's not like, oh my gosh, he's been amazing this year, but he's been solid. I think he's been better maybe than that ERA shows. And with the Brewers defense behind him, that could also help him as well. So I think we can expect a pretty solid pitcher. Is he going to be a top of the line, front line number one? Not necessarily. I think you're going to still slot him in. Heck, maybe even behind Henderson for sure. I would think behind Harrison and Miz, and so then maybe even behind Henderson. But boy, that rotation just looks. Think about it. A week ago compared to now, where you have that rotation of Miz, Harrison, Henderson, May, and then throw in Drowan or Gasser. Right now, they're going to go with a 6-man rotation and have both right now, but that looks a lot better than it did, a week ago, and that's the type of rotation that I think you can compete with in the playoffs.
I'm glad you brought up that rotation, especially the top three, if we power rank them, if you will, Miz, Harrison, and Henderson. I mean, those are 3 of the 4 in the National League with the top K rate. Do you almost feel, outside of Mizorowski maybe, that those 3 kind of get overlooked? Maybe it's from some fans or maybe just, from Major League Baseball, like, is this a rotation that can get you deep into the postseason? Because they just go out there and keep producing at such a high level.
Totally. I mean, you see, with the only times that Harrison has really struggled this year was when he was leading into that injury, and you just noticed that it just wasn't the same for him. And last night you saw, oh man, he is fresh and healthy, and I think it was really smart by the Brewers to hold him out longer than they probably needed to. Like, he could have probably come back. Like, he was eligible to come back July 24th. He came back August 5th, made that rehab start in between, had a live BP in there as well. They just took their time with him, and I think it's really smart, and you saw it pay dividends already last night with the 10 strikeout performance in just 5 innings. And if he doesn't have the cramping, he could have, his career high is 12 strikeouts. And I feel like he could have passed that possibly if he would have kept going last night, if he didn't have the cramping, which is a non-issue, which is good. But totally. And then you have Henderson, who, the guy in 15 career starts has given up 2 or less earned runs in 14 of those 15 starts. I mean, that's incredible start to his Brewers career. And so, I know he was in a lot of talks, and he heard, there was a lot of rumors about him maybe being part of that Skubal package, and he heard those too. We talked to him about it the other night. But he's like, man, I'm happy to be a Brewer. He said he went up to Matt Arnold and said, thanks for not dishing me out and appreciate you keeping me. And look, he is going to pitch his very best for this team. He's a scrappy pitcher as well. He'll fight and claw to get out of innings. And so, yeah, you really do like that. And I think behind Mizorowski Mizorowski gets a lot of the attention. Harrison was a little bit, Harrison had a 0.96 ERA in May, and I think that was when he was getting the height, of his attention. but he pitches the way he did last night down the stretch, and he's going to start to get attention again. And Henderson may be the most underrated starter for a contender right now. Like, it just feels like he is flying under the radar. Sure, he was thrown into those rumors for trade talks and everything like that. But other than that, man, he's going to give you a chance to win, it seems like, every single time he's out there.
Brandon Sproat got sent down to AAA. It kind of felt like when we heard Murphy say he was going to have a conversation with Sproat and Matt Arnold that something was going to happen here. Did it just kind of run out of time with his inconsistency this year, where the Brewers got to the point where they just maybe couldn't trust him out there anymore, and kind of a numbers game when you add a guy like Dustin May?
Totally. Someone was going to have to be the odd man out, and as much as you want to, invest in a guy and see the guy perform at the major league level, when you give up a guy like Freddie Peralta for him, kind of enough is enough. And I think you're able to say, okay, you know what, it can maybe even be better at AAA, as far as he could get more work done there, improve there, and then be back in the major league level at some point. I would not be surprised if he's back at the major league level at some point, whether it's in a relief role or something down the stretch. So we'll see when that is. But if he can work on some things at AAA, I still, he's shown glimpses of being really good. He came out of May. He had a start in Houston. And I remember him telling reporters, like, I just got to focus on getting through 5 innings. And he did for a few starts. And it seemed like, okay, things were maybe trending in the right direction. And then it kind of, July was rocky again. And again, he's not getting through 5 innings. And then you could just kind of tell the other night that was the final straw. Murph taking him out in the middle of that inning. And then you look at the numbers game with May and Harrison coming back, and you say, okay, the writing's on the wall here, and he's going to be the odd man out. So it makes sense. He told us the other night, like, it's been a rough year, and it's tough for that to be the start to your major league career. But if anybody can fix them, I think it's the Milwaukee Brewers, and that's the exciting part about the Brewers system. And maybe he goes to AAA. And look, Pat Murphy literally said that he talked to Brandon Sproat about examples of Brandon Woodruff and Freddie Peralta and Corbin Burns, who all went through struggles when they came up and had to kind of fine tune things, and look where they are all at now. So I think this can be another example of that. Of course, those are, high goals to have, but you want to have that. And Sproat was one of the top prospects in the Mets system when they traded for him. So this guy has a lot of potential. We've seen glimpses, and I think the future can be bright. He just needs to work on a few things.
Christian Yelich obviously has been a big topic as of late. Last night, getting a nice ovation, had the big RBI knock to start the scoring, finished with a couple of hits. What are his teammates kind of saying about Christian Yelich? And I know some of our listeners, I'm sure there's others saying, oh, they got to bench Christian Yelich. I can't see Pat Murphy benching Christian Yelich at this point. But what's kind of the talk like with Christian Yelich in your world?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors to this, and obviously the production just hasn't been there. He's hitting about 190 since July 1st. Really, June wasn't great either. So it's obviously been a rough go of it, and he himself admitted that to us last night. But Pat Murphy has obviously been, and you've probably seen it as well and heard, and he's been very much like, we got to encourage this guy and remember what this guy did. And this guy, there's a lot of production in there. We know who Christian Yelich is and who he can be. And honestly, if we're going to win, we need Christian Yelich to be Christian Yelich. Now, does that mean they need Christian Yelich to be MVP Christian Yelich of 18 and 19? Not necessarily, but I think they just need him to be, that guy he was last night, right? 2 for 4, a double, a stolen base, right? He just kind of does a little bit of everything. And if he can do that, you're going to be in a really good spot. I mean, it's just how different the offense can be when a guy like him, and then Contreras last night as well. But, Pat Murphy said something interesting before the game yesterday when we were talking to him about it. And he's like, he just came out and said, he's like, well, what do you want me to do? Put Joey Ortiz as the DH? Like, he said that. And he's like, no offense to Joey, but like, everybody has their identity and their role on this team. And that is such a key to the Brewers' success, is guys knowing their role, knowing their identity, and going out and doing that, right? He talked about David Hamilton, like bunting and stealing bases. That's a big part of who he is and why he, hits ninth and can set the table maybe for the top of the lineup and get on base and use his speed and bunt and catch the defense off guard and things like that. Like, that everybody has their different identity and their different role on the team. And when you start to mess that up and put Yelich on the bench, and I don't know if that's good either. I think you just kind of ride it out with Yelich. Now, I do think moving him down in the order is a good idea, and they did that the last couple of nights. It was going to be down to 7th, but then Bowers has had that abdominal soreness the last couple of days. He's missed a couple of games, so Yelich has been hitting 5th, but that's still obviously further down than 3rd and 4th, or even leadoff that he was for most of the last couple of months. So that's kind of what Pat Murphy's argument is for not benching him. Now, I don't think anybody in that clubhouse necessarily wants that guy benched. We talked to Andrew Vaughn last night, and he was like, yeah, that guy's our guy. He's the leader in this clubhouse, and, we all look up to him. So I don't think him being on the bench is necessarily going to help them. And so I think as much as it's tough to watch his at-bats and the production hasn't been there, I think you ride it out because, look, if he's hot, if last night sparked something that he's hot for the next 2 months and especially into October, we won't even be talking about June and July.
Mm-hmm. Hey, just 2 more quick questions for you. You mentioned one name I was going to bring up, Joey Ortiz. Go back to earlier in the season. I don't think anybody expected us to be maybe saying this quite often, but why isn't Joey Ortiz playing more? Why isn't he in the lineup more? Because he has been hitting as well. Is it as simple as matchups, righties and lefties, Hunter?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've been asking ourselves that as well a little bit, just like, okay, what's the reason here for it? It's certain. Basically, they play Hamilton against right-handers with a certain pitch mix, and then Ortiz against some righties and all lefties. So, it's basically the type of righty that they deploy Ortiz against, and there's reasoning for it. Now, I was talking with, I think I said it on the show last night, and I was talking with some people about it. It's a chicken or the egg thing. Is Ortiz, hitting really well? I think he's hitting around 315 since July 1st. Is that because he is being put in the lineup in, advantageous positions, right? In positions where his matchup against certain righties are really good, and so he's performing? Or is he just performing and he's hot and he'd be able to do that against anybody? Obviously, they think their data and their models and everything and what they think about and what they're seeing is that Ortiz is not going to handle certain righties as well as David Hamilton would. So that's what they're going with. You definitely can disagree with it, and I also disagree with it at times too, because I'm like, if this guy's hot, just let him play. And I thought they were going to, even with David Hamilton coming back, because I still think that, I think you're a really good team if David Hamilton is your utility man off the bench and Ortiz can be consistent, have consistent playing time at third base. But maybe he's hot because they are playing him in certain spots. Now, you could argue against that because when David Hamilton was out, Ortiz was getting consistent playing time, and he was hitting, and he was doing really well against a lot of different pitchers. So that's the reasoning from Pat Murphy. And so it's kind of dependent on, it's not strictly righty-lefty, but more so dependent on the type of righty, and that's what they're seeing from Ortiz, and that's what they're choosing.
Hunter, not to overlook Pittsburgh today in the series with Minnesota, but kind of looking ahead to next week, the West Coast trip, where you got the Padres, 4 games against the Dodgers, you're back home against Seattle, and then you got Atlanta, and then the Cubbies at the end of the month. The Cubbies playing some really good baseball, just beating the Dodgers here. How crucial is this stretch run, maybe the rest of this month here for the Brewers to not only hold on maybe to the top seed in the National League, but maybe even the division against the Cubs?
Yeah, this is going to be a key month. I mean, you just talked about the top 3 teams in the National League that they're going to have to face: Dodgers, Braves, and Cubs. And look, the Dodgers and Braves, the Dodgers have lost 6 in a row, which is wild. They have not won since they acquired Tarik Skubal, I'll have you know. But they are 2.5 back of the Brewers right now. Braves are 2 back of the Brewers as far as the race for the 1 seed. And obviously that's a race for the bye as well. 2 of those, the top 2 teams, top 2 division leaders get the bye, and the bye is so big. You just don't have to risk and chance it with that 3-game series. So it'd behoove the Brewers to, obviously win in those head-to-head games, but also today against Pittsburgh and then this weekend against the Twins, beat up on some teams that you can beat and should beat. I think that's key as well, is when you're playing, even a team like Seattle, who's not having that great of a year, go and beat them. And so it's your schedule gets significantly harder after this weekend because you've went through a stretch of Giants and Angels and Pirates and Twins and teams that are, as far as the Pirates and Twins, and they're kind of buyers at the deadline. I don't know how much noise they're really going to make, but they're obviously a tier down from the Brewers. And then you're going into that next stretch, and you're going to face a lot of teams that are in playoff positioning. So it is very key. It's going to be key that the Brewers can hold their own over the next month, but there's nothing to tell us they can't. They've done really well this year overall. Swept the Cubs at Wrigley earlier this season, and they've played, really good baseball at times. And I think hopefully, with getting healthier in that rotation, Dustin May being added, the addition of Senzatela in a couple of weeks, Jojo Romero when he's back and healthy, I think all of that could combine to having maybe your best team that you've had all year down the stretch here and into those tougher games.
He is seriously the best in the biz. Hunter Baumgart, Brewers reporter for Fox Sports Radio 920, host of the baseball pregame show and Milwaukee Baseball Tonight. Man, I always love chatting baseball with you. Appreciate the time as always, and we'll talk to you again soon, okay, buddy?
Absolutely. No, you are too kind. Appreciate it. Love hopping on with you, Dan, and we'll definitely do it again soon.